don't plan on staying on for long. It's already past midnight. The only reason I'm still doing it is because I had already set it up for around 10 p.m. Uh, Obviously, it's past that, so not going to stay on for long. But I did still want to do it. Um, this is to continue sort of with what we were talking about yesterday. I met yesterday to be talking specifically about Middle East problems, but the discussion diverged into a bunch of other things. Um, and so just sort of to piggyback off of that stuff from yesterday, just talking about a bunch of like skirmishes all over the globe, this like tr- kind of tribalistic sort of things going on between different ethnic groups. Um, by the way, happy winter to everyone. Yesterday was winter solstice, December 21st, winter solstice, which is usually when it's the longest time that all these holidays happen. It is no coincidence that there are a bunch of ancient religions, particularly around the Middle East, North Africa, Southern Europe, where there have, yes, God's planets who have their birthdays on December 25th and are born of virgin mothers. Sounds similar, doesn't it? Yeah. So, in any case, in this region, like I said yesterday, we were talking about a lot of the different issues going on, and I was saying the biggest one is one that we didn't go too much depth into, which was between Israel and Hamas, and potentially I specifically labeled it Israel and Hamas because it's not really Israel versus Palestine, and I laid out some of the reasons for that. Um, but instead of talking about the Middle East, we started talking about all sorts of things yesterday. So I wanted to just piggyback on that. So today's geopolitical discussion isn't about any particular region. It's about just the different skirmishes going on across the globe between two rivaling ethnic groups, like between the Israeli Jews versus the Israeli Arabs, and all the people jumping in one side or what. Carlty said, "Did you talk about the drones and orbs?" No, because that's had nothing to do with the Middle East. Like I said, I had talked about the Middle East, and I'm talking about inter-ethnic skirmishes that has nothing to do with drones and orbs. That I wish people would listen to look at the topic. I know it's past midnight, so I may not stay on for long because I already see trolls coming in, and I have very little tolerance for stupid people and mentally ill, which is why I never became a clinician when I took up psychology, decided not to pursue a clinical psychology program after undergrad. So I don't really want to deal with mental midgets. So people coming in here is being silly, timeout or ban. Um, so yeah, so we talked about that, but we got into a bunch of other skirmishes going on, of course, between Ukraine and Russia. Um, and again, just like with the Israel versus Hamas situation. We're talking about two ethnic groups that have history going all the way back to the Middle Ages with the Ukraine and Russia, as far as Israel and Hamas, or the people Hamas claim to represent, the Palestinians. That goes all the way back to literally the biblical times. Then there's skirmishes going on in the subcontinent of India, um, on India's eastern border. They've been having a long-standing skirmish with the country, which I will not mention anymore on this channel unless it's in a good way, because YouTube doesn't like anything divisive said about them. And I'm talking about CHINA. Um, so they've had issues with them. Some people brought up the partition of Pakistan from East Pakistan and West Pakistan, where East Pakistan became Bangladesh. And I was like, okay, that's cool, but I was like, they kind of have a history of not getting along with others, because they, these same folks, were the ones who made the Great Partition of India, which separated into Pakistan, um, which we know abundantly about. Um, there's some issues going on in Sri Lanka as well. Like I said, people, if people want to bring that up, that's again with that same CHINA country, not to mention with the rebels in the south of the Philippines, rebelling against the national government since the 70s, and they've been aided by Al Qaeda and ISIS. Yes, Al Qaeda and ISIS have made their way all the way to the Philippines, and have been um, aiding and abetting the rebels in the southern region of the Philippines called Mindanao. So that's an ongoing thing that people don't really talk about, but is a huge issue in the Philippines. It's like so much so, like, if you're visiting there, like say from the United States, they give a huge travel warning against going to that part of the country for Americans and other foreigners, because they will often kidnap and unalive foreigners in that region, which is kind of a shame, because a lot of the people there who are not invested in the rebellion are some of the nicest people ever. The Philippine people of the Philippines generally are very nice, and even in that very hostile region of the country, most of the locals are very nice, but they are at the mercy of these armed rebels in some parts of Mindanao, not all parts. Um, what else? I mean, we can talk about what's going on in Latin America, different countries there, between Venezuela apparently um, releasing a lot of their criminals out of the jails, which made their ways all the way up to the U.S. And yes, it's not is this is not fear mongering. Like they literally, like, this is not something new. Cuba literally did this back in the 70s as well, when they released a bunch of their criminals, which made their way into America, specifically into like um, southern Florida, Miami region, the Miami Dade County area, and we see that with Venezuela. They released a bunch of those folks because this gang that they keep talking about, the trend to Aragua, they are a prison gang. They were a prison gang in Venezuela. So to see them all over the U.S. is is because they released them. They released these folks It's easier instead of paying to keep these people incarcerated just to release them and make them some other country's problem. And this is why they need to be mass deported to Venezuela because these people weren't refugees. Like if you're a refugee, you would have you would have seeked asylum in the next neighboring country. You wouldn't have came 3 4 countries up to seek asylum. Is BS. And and on top of that, they would have sought asylum through the regular channels that you seek refugee asylum. Um, you got some issues in Colombia, which is why I keep telling passport bros not to go there, um, because there is a t- terrorist and anti government group called FARC there, which had a long-standing treaty with the national government, which kind of broke down a year or two ago. So they're kind of going at it. Um, these folks see these tourists coming there as easy targets, especially as they are coming there to date their women who are admittedly beautiful, but they target these tourists specifically through like dating apps like Tinder and stuff like that, where they set them up to get robbed and drugged. So that's an issue. Um, Another issue we talked about when we were specifically talking about Europe was Germany, how its breakdown, like how the chancellor there failed with some initiative and has led to a destabilization of the country there and some economic failure, which has ripples throughout the EU. Um, there's an energy crisis going on in Europe, so we talked about that. But again, I want to kind of stick to like inter-ethnic skirmishes, and I might have to save this for another day because it's Sunday night. I'm not sure if it's the best time to bring this up. I was originally going to switch to a different subject, something more lighthearted, but I was like, I want to piggyback on yesterday while it was still fresh. But in, it's probably too late. I don't know how rewarding it can be at this time of night. I don't have any of my moderators here that can guide the conversation. Um, so we'll see. Um, and again, the whole drone thing that can be talked about in a different subject, but that really has nothing to do with a geopolitical discussion unless we're gonna try to make that connection that these drones come from a certain country that I can't say here. Starts with a C, ends with an A. It is likely, it is probable that they came from them because we already know about 3 years ago they tested those balloons above our in our airspace, which freaked out a lot of people. And they did the same BS then, where they said, "Oh, it's nothing really going on." And people kept saying, "No, we see these balloons or whatever." So then the government was like, "Well, yeah, okay, yeah, they're real, but they're not a threat." Then we learned, they're from China, and they're like, "Oh, so you're just gonna let them fly their balloons over our airspace and not do anything?" Which actually, looking at it, no, they shouldn't do anything because basically it was basically that country testing our capabilities. That's what they were doing. I mean, I'm shooting a little bit above my pay grade here, but from my understanding, they only did it just to test what our capabilities would be if they came into our airspace. What would be our response? So us not doing it immediately overreacting to those balloons was probably a smart thing. Even though if what the government should have done is they shouldn't have kept the public um, in the black about it. They should have been kind of open about it. The government's go-to response is always secrecy, but it's not a good thing when you are being secretive about things like that because it's going to cause a moral panic. And that's the same thing that's happened in the New Jersey situation where you have these drones flying over their airspace. Even the local government doesn't know, isn't privy to what's going on. Like the mayor um, in the one particular town where it was happening frequently wasn't told anything. And it's like that sort of secretiveness can cause moral panic. Like that's the worst thing that can happen out of the situation. Is not that these drones are going to attack us, obviously, is that people, you know, it's going to cause a moral panic because people don't know what's going on. The government either refuses to tell them what's going on, um, or you know they don't, they may not know themselves. But in any case, just being, if they sometimes were a little bit more forthright about those situations, it would probably lead to a lot less conspiracy theories and people freaking out. Because once you, I mean, it's only going to take, a particular situation where, and they're lucky it's in New Jersey, because if it happened in the South, oh, it'd have been worse. Pretty sure someone would start shooting at that shit in a country where they'll, and I mean, in a state where they have a little bit more freedom with firearms, someone would have shot at those drones. I think someone already did, if I'm not incorrect, in New Jersey. But yeah, I mean, it only takes one person freaking out and pulling out that, pulling out that rifle and start shooting at those things. It's gonna cause a panic. So I don't know. That could be a potential geopolitical situation. Like I said, if it's whom we suspect it is, the country that starts with a C, ends with an A, and who sent balloons over to our country 3 years ago. Like I said, I think they pretty much did that just to test what our capabilities would be if they invaded our airspace. And we were kind of smart not to overreact to it, but the government was dumb not to tell its citizens whom they thought that technology belonged to and why they weren't doing anything immediately about it. If they had said that when it happened instead of after the fact, it would have led to a more rational response amongst the populace. What else is going on? Like, there's so many other things. Um, and I'm going to speak about specific countries, but we've had like 2 weeks ago, South Korea declare martial law, which is a serious thing going on. Not to mention, South Korea has decided to be very decidedly anti woke, and it was like, yeah, we're not putting up with that BS that you guys are doing here in the West. That's the thing. Um, they've seen the largest depopulation of any country in the world, um, close with a close second, I think, like Japan and China, and they're all for like similar reasons. I'm talking to the ether here, so I'm probably going to end this. Like I said, I didn't think starting this so late would have was very a very great idea of mine. But what I am going to do is I'm going to continue this conversation the following day. We're going to talk about again inter-ethnic skirmishes going on across the globe, and I have no problem talking about the ones we've already talked about in the last few days, like in the Middle East, particularly against Israel versus Hamas, Ukraine versus Russia, um, and some other places. The only thing I'm not going to talk about is that big red country in East Asia. I'm not going to talk about them because YouTube decidedly does not like that talked about on their platform. Most likely because they are a huge potential market for you know for marketing and advertising. So I don't blame them if it's. I think a lot of people who report on the news in Asia think that YouTube has a bias towards those folks. They don't have a bias towards them so much as they want their money. And obviously you can't get their money if people make content that's not safe for to be played over there. So I get it. So I won't be talking about them in any sort of way that can be seen negative or derogatory, because I started to a few days ago, and that live stream got limited ad suitability. So I learned not to talk about them, as I already known I shouldn't have, but I got ahead of myself, and I already knew better not to talk about them. So you know, lesson taken. Won't be talking about them except in this oblique way as I'm referencing them now. But won't be talking about them directly using their name or the name of the people or the name of their government. So, because all of those things would be bad for YouTube, and that means for me. Um, but there's plenty of other things to talk about. Like I said, other ethnic skirmishes. And when it does involve that country, we'll just refer obliquely to them as I am doing now. You know, C to the H to the I to the N, you get it. But I'm gonna end this, guys, unless there's no one in the chat room. But if people, I'll upload this for replay. People can be sure to bring up comments and questions in the comment section when they watch it on replay, when they watch this broadcast on replay, and I'll answer them there, or I'll save it for the next live stream, which will be done earlier in the evening, Eastern Standard Time. Um, but yeah, I guess I'm ending here because, like I said, no one in the chat room. Don't want to keep talking into the ether for like a long time. And I realize most of the people that will gravitate into here will probably be trolls. Oh, I didn't even see your message earlier, Howard Clegg. He says, "Enjoy your content. I'll hang with you. Appreciate it." I don't think he was able to hang too long though. No, did he? What's up, Jason? But anyway, guys, I am going to go. So, like I said, unless if anyone doesn't have any thoughts, comments, or questions about interethnic skirmishes, I'm gonna save that talk for the next time around, since it was so late. No, I'm not finding you a boyfriend. I'm not gay, and I don't agree with that lifestyle, and that has nothing to do with my fucking channel. And you're probably a kid. Go do something better with your time. So that's what I'm talking about. Past midnight, you get a bunch of trolls. Um, and it's not by accident. People at midnight, it brings out the worst people because just on social media alone, a lot of people will come out because of the 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 anonymity of being behind the screen gives allows people to be more bold And then when it gets late, people also see a sort of anonymity in the darkness of nighttime. So you add those two together, it's the anonymity of being behind a screen for pussy ass niggas, and the anonymity of being in the dark, which is how criminals, you know, which is how criminals, kind of do their thing at night in the darkness. You put those two things together, and you get your your textbook type online troll. Then also late at night is tend to have more mentally ill people. I don't know what you're talking about, Chief. That has nothing to do with this conversation. FBA isn't racist. Do you FBA stands for Foundational Black American. All that means is just a term that means that black people who came to this country prior to the prior to the 1860s. That's all that means. There's nothing racist about it. It's a lineage of people. To say FBA is racist would be to say Jewish is racist, Italian is racist, Irish is racist. That doesn't make any sense. A lineage cannot be racist. You literally don't know the terms that you are using. FBA is a lineage, and it's just a new term for black Americans to distinguish black Americans who have always lived in this country from the immigrants who've came here in the 20th century. Most most of the black immigrants, Latino immigrants, and Asian immigrants weren't here prior to 1965 because of the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965. Ironically, it was the same black civil rights leaders, FBA, people of FBA lineage, Foundational Black American, also called ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery. It was these same black Americans who were civil rights leaders who got the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Right Act of 1965 were also the ones who supported the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965. Chief, I think you're probably a Generation Z person. Like most Generation Z retard faggots like yourself, you don't know anything that's happened before 1994, and you're fucking stupid, retarded, you're mentally ill, schizophrenic, dumb piece of shit, low testosterone, faggot ass bitch, and don't know shit of what you're talking about. You're calling a lineage racist. You fucking moron. Get the fuck off my channel. Don't ever fucking come back. And that will be the end of today. I don't like talking to retarded people past midnight. It's like feeding gremlins. So that will be the end of that. Salute, guys. This conversation about inter-ethnic skirmishes will be continued tomorrow, um, albeit under a different title, but it will be the same conversation. So, guys, go. You can check out some of my other content on here for people watching this on replay. If not, have a good evening or a good day if you're on the other side of the world. Peace.